Hello everyone, welcome again to today's webinar on mobile-friendly websites using responsive design. I am Tanita Pruill, Interactive Business Strategist at Envano. And our focus today is to review a future-focused approach to websites. Whether it's desktop, laptop, mobile phone, smart TV, or tablet, you need to be prepared to serve customers online now and in the future. Future-focused or future-friendly as a philosophy began gaining speed in early 2011 and today is known as a pretty common web development philosophy coupled with responsive web design, which we'll cover later in the webinar. I'd like to introduce David Sauter, who is the President and CEO at Envano, an interactive business firm located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Envano has pioneered what is now being referred to as interactive business, a paradigm shift in the way organizations operate using new technology tools. Envano works with a variety of organizations, including the Aaron's Company, Miller Electric, and Shopko Hometown Stores. With that, we'll turn it over to David.
Hello everyone, hope you're having a good Thursday so far. A few housekeeping things before we begin. Feel free to pose questions at any time via the chat at the bottom of the screen. We'll be monitoring them on our side and will address at the end of the webinar. We'll also be sending you a recorded version of the webinar via email later today. Today we're going to discuss the current interactive landscape in our mobile society, which is evolving at light speed. We'll dig into responsive design as a way to be future-friendly. What is it? What does it look like? And why and when to use it? We'll also share examples of organizations who are leveraging responsive design to adapt their sites to different screen sizes and contexts, and thereby reaching greater numbers of people to convert to sales. We'll briefly touch on the development process, talking specifically about two key elements, context and content. We'll also ask the most important question: who and where is your customer? Then we'll close by sharing additional resources, including access to our white paper, The Keys to Innovation, Responsive Web Design. Consider this. Not long ago, we were introduced to the desktop computer. I think I actually remember that. It was bulky, the screen was small and hard to see, and things on it were in black and white, or amber, or many of them were green. Very quickly, we moved into the 21st century. And today, we are inundated with more devices than we have hands for. You and your customers are constantly connected through technology, to the internet, to each other, to information about your brand, product, and your competition. If we've come from black and white desktops to too many devices for the number of hands on Earth in a couple decades, just think about where we'll be in only 5 years with the rapid growth rate of technology. Today, 30% of all internet traffic comes in on a mobile device, a number that has increased by about 150% every year since 2008. To reiterate, the growing importance of mobile, think about the role it plays within a company. Today, work is no longer a place, just a place. It's something you do. You can literally do it from anywhere. Think about the number of companies that provide their employees with smartphones. 75% of the US workforce is mobile and will continue to increase. This is important when you think about the fact that mobile is used 3 primary ways in work situations. First, for communication. Second, as a tool to get my job done. This particularly comes into play when we look at field sales and key sales tactics that are making their way into effective selling, mobile usage being one of them. And finally, mobile is being integrated within products. For example, Manitowoc Cranes has integrated mobile into their major machines. Same with AGCO and their combines. Mobile is key, and its importance will continue to grow. By considering responsive design today, you can get prepared for tomorrow. So the evidence is pretty clear, but if statistics aren't enough, you should know that Google embraces responsive web design techniques and implementation. They've actually stated it publicly, which is not something they often do relative to their algorithms. As most of us know, Google is a key player in propelling us into the future in terms of technology. They are the head honcho or the lead dog. They are recommending this approach. You better believe it is going to become a big part of how they conduct search. Think about Google Glass. Google Glass is really the first into a foray towards wearable technology. We're going to start to see more and more devices that are tiny, wearable, in an increasing amount of things around your home, around your business, that will connect to the internet and each other. We already have smart cars, smart refrigerators. A lot of manufacturers are moving towards integrating mobile into their products and machines. And who knows what else in the future. As more and more devices are internet connected, you're going to have more and more websites to build to make sure you are top of mind for your customers. Unless that is, you consider responsive design and prepare for the future in advance. One of the greatest challenges is that we used to create websites the same way we paint a picture. A static page with images and text designed for one environment. Like a painting on a canvas, it's always viewed at the same size it was created. Size and orientation never change. When we access sites from so many different devices, this just doesn't work well anymore. So the solution really is what the industry is terming responsive design. Now you may see other terminology for it, but they all really fall under the umbrella of what we call future-friendly as an approach to staying prepared for what tomorrow will bring in the tech world. We like the term future-friendly because it's a broader term and more encompassing of the philosophy and approach. Very quickly, for those who haven't heard the term, future-friendly is an industry term coined by a group of individuals that pioneered the movement. The goal behind the philosophy is twofold. First, to acknowledge and embrace unpredictability. As we know, our world is constantly changing, so we need to think and act in a future-friendly way. So when things change, specifically revolving around business and technology, we are always proactive, and in turn are helping you and your customers to stay proactive. We need to be prepared for what is coming tomorrow and next year, instead of working to catch up with what we missed out on yesterday. One example of this is that companies often get caught up in an enterprise mentality, and they're oftentimes implementing old technology. And it's one of the ongoing challenges and fights we have with our customers, to always be looking forward and trying to figure out how to get ahead of the curve. So responsive web design is a development methodology that is used to help stay prepared for what's next, in which websites are designed to work on all current devices, and it helps to prepare the code base for all future devices. So it doesn't necessarily mean it is going to work on the purported Apple Watch, but rather than having to write a whole new base of code, what you do is simply add another style. It's a much quicker and more efficient way to handle future devices. For most of us, non-technical people, we wonder why websites can't show up on all devices already. And the answer to that can be complex, and I'll give you a simple version. Think about all the devices out there. We have smartphones, tablets, laptops, desktop computers, all the different brands, and all of which have different screen sizes. In order for a site to work well and provide a good user experience while accounting for all those screen sizes, traditionally, we would have had to build a website for each screen size for every device out there. Just to give you an idea, we've got a graphic that we'll share. This image shows the literally hundreds of screen sizes just in the Android market, all of which would require a different mobile site if you went that route. It can be a very daunting task, especially from the development side. So how responsive works? And again, trying to stay as non-technical as possible because we'd have to bring in a whole different group of experts on that side. The important thing is to understand the core. Responsive design is a different approach than a traditional site. Sites that are built responsibly adapt the layout, content, copy, images, etc. to the user's screen size, their platform, and the device and orientation based on blocks that we lay out. As well as if someone has a touch screen, we can detect that and enable touch controls. So if you look at Envano.com right now on your smartphone vertically, and then flip the phone so it's horizontal, our site will automatically readjust so you have the best possible viewing experience no matter how you're looking at it. It operates the same way on tablets and on computers. So we're actually adjusting those content blocks depending on the device and screen size that the person is viewing it on. Here's an example of the same content adjusted for when you come in on a smartphone. These content blocks can be moved around, resized, restyled based on various factors. Screen size is the most common, user location, screen brightness, connection speed, and much more. This particular example looks primarily at core content, but you can actually change image size, image load time, font size. All these things can be adjusted based on the device. It's amazing how much information we can actually get from the user's device and when they visit the site. So now that you know a little background, we're going to jump right into a live demo. We're going to take a look at Audi's site, and just so you know, we didn't do Audi's site, but we are very impressed, and they are one of the first major car brands to redesign in a responsive manner. They're obviously trying to stay ahead of the curve for their customer base. So we'll go into the demo, and what you're going to see is an automated, animated example of the site on a variety of devices. And then I'll just kind of talk you through as we move up and down for the different simulated platforms and screen sizes. So as you can see, they have a big primary image at the top and their core nav. So they have a very kind of traditional structure to their site, and then content cascading down below. You're seeing kind of into a tablet mode, and now we've just switched over to smaller tablet and smartphone mode, and you can see how a lot of the navigation at the top changed. And then we're going to start scaling back up, and you'll see how content starts to spread out. Image size is changing and adjusting. One of the things you would also have noticed is the font sizes start to adjust based upon the device, so that we move away from the old days of pinch zoom, where the text is too small to read, and we move into a scenario where we're sort of handling that shift for the user. So their experience is much more fluid and comfortable, and they don't have to do anything on their side in order to view the content. One of the sort of anecdotes here is that when Apple introduced the iPhone, they introduced that whole pinch zoom concept. And although it isn't a very elegant way to view content, what they did is they used it as a way to bridge the gap between really the old way of just basically having text type content on a BlackBerry or phone, and getting us into a visual environment, but getting access to the content that existed on the web already. Problem was that none of the content, or very little of the content on the web, was really structured and displayed to work even on an iPhone when they first were introduced. And so, although it's interesting because Apple typically doesn't like to do anything that's not elegant, they helped us, the user, to bridge that gap. And so they sold enough devices, and they sort of pulled the market along and pulled content creators along to start to change how they're creating and displaying content. So again, as you see, Audi's going up and down. Another sort of anecdote to this is from I guess trying to keep it a high-level technical discussion. We're always trying to make sure we're being good to the customer, and some of that stuff is very, very behind the scenes. So some of these images, when you want them to display really clear on a desktop, but when we get down to, so we have fairly large images on the desktop, optimized but still larger, we can actually make them much smaller for the smartphone, and in turn decrease the data necessary to pass them to the user. This makes users happy when they're starting to have non-unlimited data plans. So there's an awful lot of things that we do for our customers on the backside that makes the experience better. It also increases the load time, and Google actually detects that and gives you some benefits for it. So I think we'll move on a little to the development process. We'll go on to the demo mode. So that's our live demo of Audi. Now we're going into the weeds, and we're going to talk briefly about the development process that we go through, but more from an executive level perspective. We're not going to get into the bits and bytes and the HTML and CSS and all that stuff. We're going to talk more about the things that are important to the strategy and the decision-making process, and again, to help to justify why a responsive design and future-friendly make a lot of business sense. So we talked definition, and we've now seen the end result in action at Audi. There's quite a process that goes on in between to make these things happen successfully. The other piece of responsive design, why it remains so important, has to do with mobility. Your customers today are just simply everywhere. They look at your site when they're at the store. They look on your site or at your site at home when they're researching. They check out your company news while they sit at their desk at work. You need to be wherever they are, whenever they call on you. But like we said, this can be expensive. A lot of companies originally built a variety of different sites to address each platform. And then when there were really only desktop and smartphone or mobile devices, it wasn't really a bad strategy. In fact, for some, it's still a good interim strategy. And as you move forward, you have to continually grow in the number of devices. As the number of devices continuously grows with iPads and tablets, it's getting more and more complicated. It can take a lot of resources and end up essentially being very unproductive. The other piece is that you want content to be consistent across all devices. And sometimes if you have multiple systems, it could be a big struggle. Whether it be pricing, product information, product changes, you name it. So everything to think about in the development process, excuse me, here is the first and most important question. Who and where is your audience? Think about who you are trying to speak to or get to. When you fully understand your end user, whether it's a homeowner, business owner, dealer, whatever, you will then be able to truly understand where they are and what kind of information they are looking for and when. You will know what content best suits them and is more likely to convert to a sale. Focusing on your audience is the first step and will guide how you approach the other two key elements of context and content. So we've talked about the importance of knowing your audience, which I understand for many of you is a kind of a marketing 101 question, but we include it, we always include it because we're surprised at how many of our customers and people we talk to kind of move straight to the technology and they want to get all excited about that and they kind of forget about the core fundamentals, the biggest one being audience. So now we're going to talk a little bit about context. This is an interesting one because it wasn't as big a factor when we were primarily targeting people who were literally at their desks or in more of a work mode on their computers. But now they're on these different devices and can grab a few minutes on their smartphone and read an article. Context then is where and in what mindset the user is in. So you need to be online when and where your customers are looking in any context. It may be at the store looking at or comparing product reviews or prices, or sitting on the couch at home relaxed, or on site looking for spare parts or immediate service. I can theoretically ask how many of you have been in a store looking at a product and flip online to check out the price on Amazon. It is the location and audience frame of mind, whether they are in a research phase, purchase phase, or need support with all the information to make a difference in terms of what content you need to serve up to them. The last key consideration in the process is really content. A content-first approach to building a responsive website is crucial. What are the key messages your customers need to see? Like we mentioned, they may be different on a desktop than on a mobile device. Oftentimes, we'll surface different pieces of content depending on the device we see people coming in on. Top priority content-wise on a mobile device is usually physical brick and mortar or dealer location and contact information, because there's a good chance visitors coming in on a mobile device are somewhere on the go. With responsive design, content reformats for all devices. So your main call to action a visitor sees when coming in on a desktop can be can be and often is different than the one visitor sees. But all this is done in one website, one code base, where content automatically reformats based on the device being used. So content and context are key to some of this decision making. For many of our clients, the whole context discussion is very new, and it's an evolving process. We try to address it as best we can in phase one, but then adjust through some user testing and analytics viewing to try and understand how the user and the device operate. It helps here to have a good analytics program like Google Analytics. We can use this to really dig into audience behavior and understand where and when people are coming in on a smartphone versus a desktop. So the three, audience, context, and content, are all extremely important and very, very intertwined. We're going to go next into another demo. So the last thing we want to do before we go into questions is show you another demo. This is one of our partners, Gravely. And Gravely is an Aaron's company brand on the commercial grounds care side, essentially big, heavy lawn equipment. They're a long-standing brand, and they chose to go responsive for a couple reasons. First, they've seen a 122% increase in mobile traffic over the last year. They have limited resources for content management, and keeping a variety of sites up to date is just cost prohibitive. They need to maintain fresh content available to decision makers on the showroom floor as well. So one of the things we haven't touched on yet is the fact that 12 or 15 years ago, we were doing work with customers to put kiosks on the showroom floor. It was a challenge because of content and hardware maintenance. We didn't have the internet to feed it at the time, so the content delivery was also a challenge. The beauty of today is that we've eliminated a lot of the hardware problems because people have literally a kiosk in the palm of their hand on the showroom floor. So all we need to do is present the content to them in the right way at the right time. There's all kinds of ways to make sure we do that well, but this is huge for a brand like Gravely, who always wants to make sure marketing materials and sales materials are fresh on the showroom floor. So we're going to take a look at Gravely. You'll see some similar things going on as you did with Audi. The design methodology appears to be fairly similar. So as we went through the audience content process with Gravely, we started first with the audience, focusing on three primary. Professional landscapers, which is their main audience who uses their product. And the dealers, and again, they're field salespeople who use the responsive site as a sales tactic, sales tool. The fresh content opportunity comes into play for all three audiences. Dealers are using this now to always have fresh content as a sales tool. The same goes for the salespeople. I'm sure you've never experienced or seen a salesperson with old content. Maybe it came out of their trunk and they've got older brochures and they want to use them up. Stuff's expensive, so it's a bit of a challenge, and maybe they're not allowed to order new stuff until they get their old stuff out there. But the challenge is that it's out of date and it doesn't really help the user in the sales process. So then from a content perspective, we took a look at what users typically need from a desktop versus a mobile. So as you can see, as the animation goes and it scales up and down, we're heading down again to smartphone level. Soon you're going to see the primary nav move, and then your three other items stay up there. So parts, contact, and find a dealer. What's happening is up in the upper left is a little square there with three lines, and this is a tool that is becoming consistent across many apps and sites. And that was actually, I think it was started by either Apple or Facebook. They both use it. What it does is it's a natural thing for people to know that the primary nav is up in that little icon. So on a smartphone and a tablet, we can put it there and we can unclutter the main viewing space. So what you'll see is very similar in Gravely that we saw in Audi, is that we're adjusting content, and we're even doing a little bit of moving content around based upon the context. So I think there's think that's primarily. We're going to scroll down at smartphone level, and what you'll see is as you move down the content, you'll see very products. I don't want to go down to a specific in these. So we're going to be able to look at a specific product information. A little bit of a lag being created by the webinar. If you scroll down towards the bottom, you're going to see there's a number of really kind of tabs or areas that we can open up and close. So the challenge with a smartphone is that just you don't have the screen space. And this gives us some tools and some ability to still have that content available to the user for those that want it, kind of secondary content, but not necessarily clutter the entire screen and the entire space. We do some of that on the desktop as well, but it becomes a very, very useful tool when we're down at a smartphone or a tablet level. So I think we're good for the Gravely demo. So at this point, we'd like to take some questions in the group, and we'll answer those as quickly as we can. We've got probably 15 to 20 minutes remaining. We stay a little longer if we need to, so we can address any questions. We can also address any questions that they come up in the future for you. We're always available via email or by phone. Both Tanita and I are both very customer-facing and very interested in helping you out with what you might need. So, let's see. First question is, what is the biggest challenge with responsive design? I'd have to probably say it's the paradigm shift, and it's to try and make sure that we start with those three basic questions around audience, context, and content. And because we're moving into this sort of mobile environment, and it's a big change for a lot of people, even though they're living it and they're using it, when they get into their work mode and they're in their business mode, they still struggle a little bit to put themselves in the shoes of the customer. And so that's where the audience piece comes in. We very much, we try to stand in the shoes of the customer, and that could be the salesperson, that could be the dealer, person on the showroom floor, or the end user of product as well. We try and stand in their shoes and look at it through their eyes. And so it's probably the biggest shift is the context piece and bringing that into play in the decision-making process. Let's see. I have a website and a mobile app. Should I consider responsive design? It's a very good question. One of the things that we have been doing for a while is helping customers with just kind of a mobile strategy. And again, it kind of comes down to those same questions. A mobile app is really most applicable to a specific function. So we've got a couple that have created mobile apps that are kind of calculators for their process. We have some that help identify service issues and connect the person with the right service person or part or repair. So we have mobile apps really are best for a lot of brands for specific tasks. But if you're simply trying to get your existing content that is kind of your core website and that information, the stuff is very similar that you're trying to convey to a mobile device or smartphone or tablet, then the responsive approach is a very, very effective approach because you can save a lot of dollars, you can save a lot of maintenance and that sort of thing by having one code base. And I think that's the thing that sometimes gets lost in the discussion is that you have one primary code base with almost, I know my developers would probably hate me for saying this, but almost templates that allow the content to adjust based upon the device that's the person's coming in on. So you can address the myriad of devices and yet not really just duplicate your cost across those varying devices. So that leads right into the next question that we've got. The cost or investment associated. To a great degree, I think it's very cost effective versus an approach that tries to build different sites for different devices. So it's certainly not as inexpensive as necessarily just building a site for the web. There's a lot of other considerations, and the sort of knowledge and training of the team that's working on it is important. But it's not multiplicatively costly to add another device. There is some additional coding and some additional testing that goes on. But again, the major benefit is that when you update the content, you're updating it once. You're updating it across all of your responses, your responding sizes, and so you really eliminate a lot of that maintenance component. Let's see. Will responsive design sites work on all the browsers and operating systems? But doesn't necessarily have to. So what we often do is we look at the statistics for the specific customer site, the current site, and try to anticipate and project what those devices people are coming in on that may grow. Because sometimes into a website and it's not a mobile-friendly experience, they don't stay long and they may not return. So it's not the existing statistics aren't a perfect representation of what people will do. But it does at least give us a feeling for what people are coming in on today. So then we try to anticipate that. We also look at general statistics for the market, the number of devices out there, and try to figure out what level of sizes we're going to respond to, as well as what specific devices that we're going to test on. We've actually got a myriad of devices we have here that we actually physically test on. And then we do know that if you develop responsively to a broad enough set, that you'll do a pretty good job of covering other devices and sizes as well. It's not a perfect equation, but it's a pretty darn good one in comparison to traditional development approaches. The browser thing, as well as the OS level thing, is a little bit trickier, and it's not too bad when we're dealing primarily in a North American marketplace, because statistics are good and we have good knowledge there. But when you're getting into an international approach, it can be a little bit more interesting and trickier. And at that point, we typically recommend that we look at the markets specifically. So let me give you a simple example, just to kind of implant in your minds. If you go to India, the devices they're using, which then relate to the operating systems and the browsers that they're using, are very different than the ones we're using. And what we need to do is we need to look at that marketplace. We need to look at the devices and things that people are using, and then apply our development methodology to those devices, which, our North American lens will not necessarily work in that market. So if there's a specific targeted audience and market, geographic market that we want to go after, we will want to take a look at, and we'd have resources to go to find out what kind of devices are prevalent and most popular in those environments. So that's a big one. We can, and some take it as a challenge, to respond and test down to some very, very basic levels. A great example that I was given is, I think when the Boston Globe redid their site responsively, they actually tested down to the original Kindle version. And there's a browser on the original Kindle. We've actually got one in our museum, and it's fairly textual, fairly simple, but they were able to get their content to display in a reasonable manner so that the person could experience the content effectively, all the way down to Kindle One. So if there's a desire or a need to go kind of backward compatible, it's another thing responsive design can often help with. Let's see. So I think I might have sort of mentioned this in some of the other answers, but are there any recurring maintenance costs to responsive design? And the answer is yes, and absolutely. And there's recurring maintenance costs to any website or any interactive deployment. But I will say that, again, what you're doing is you're addressing a broader audience for the same or less dollars. And so, it depends on how you want to justify this fiscally, but if I take, here's the audience I can appeal to, here's some metrics of non-bounding visits, and do something along those lines and put a dollar value to it, what you're going to find is that if you do a responsive approach, you're going to be appealing to a broader audience and a larger audience in a better way. It should probably get you, it almost certainly will get you more time spent in that content and a better user experience if you were to survey your audience. Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. Kind of red mind on this one. We have a lot of, and this applies to a lot of our customers as well. It says, we have a really big old site. I doubt any of you out there have this challenge. So you've invested a lot of time, money, effort into what probably could be considered a legacy code or old technology. And the question then is, can we implement responsive incrementally? That's interesting because there's sort of in the technical world, there's a desire to sort of throw it all out and start fresh, start anew. And although I understand that methodology and theoretically probably agree with it, in the real world, it oftentimes doesn't work. Or what we do is we have this grand plan and we get ready and we go and we spend 1.5 years or 2 years implementing, and lo and behold, we're already outdated. So was that really the right approach? I mean, again, theoretically, it sounds like a great approach, except the world is moving at an increasingly rapid rate. And what we're finding, and I guess we found this early in the game, but it's just continuing to increase and become more and more embedded in our approach, is that an incremental approach to change probably is much more doable, valuable, and productive. So how that is actually executed and done is will often vary based upon the scenario. But what we think can be done is you can pick based upon user choices. So if your users, your visitors, spend a lot of time in your product section, and that's their favorite space, and they spend a lot of time and spend a lot of you get a lot of visitors there, then maybe start with that and put together a strategy that gets the product section of your site to being responsive to the different devices coming in. So it's maybe elegant, although not perfect. So if somebody's in the product responds well to a smartphone, but then they move to a different section, and that section is more of a pinch zoom, the argument always is, well, now I've given them a poor experience. Well, I would argue that you've given them a good experience in the stuff what was most important to them, and you've only diminished their value, or only diminished their view of it to a poor experience in the less viewed content. What it allows to do is to constantly improve each section as you go and circle back on those sections that maybe you started with, for example, products, and do a redesign or a refresh of the way in which you approach it. One thing we've learned with responsive, and our developers, we talk about this a lot, is that every site that they've done responsively, they've learned quite a few things, both from what the market's teaching us, but also from our own experience, and we're able to adjust. So we're actually getting ready to do a refresh of the Envano site, and that was one of our early responsive sites, and so there are a number of things that we do now that we didn't do then, and so we're excited to then kind of come back and redo that one and do kind of a comparison of what did it look like then and what does it look like now and how does it work and what's the user experience, and then we'll look at the impact from our users coming in and try to anticipate or see what benefits that has. It's probably a couple examples there of Aaron's and Gravely. They've adopted the incremental approach very, very effectively, and so what they have is kind of a cycle where they'll go through and they'll redo different sites because they have a variety of them. They'll redo different sites on a schedule, and it's about an 18 to 24 month cycle. And a redo might not mean completely throwing it out and starting over. What it might mean is we're going through and just making incremental changes based on what we've learned. All the time the content's being maintained and kept up, but we might actually go through and refresh some of those on a fairly high rate. But we're not doing all of their sites all at once, which it just is cost prohibitive, and it also taxes taxes the talent both on their side and ours. So I think that is all the questions. We very much appreciate the questions, and we appreciate your time. We will, as said, we will send the recorded version of this webinar to you. But if you're interested in more information, you can go to a URL, and it's on the screen now. You don't need the www. It's just responsive.eikeys.com, and it's our white paper on responsive design. So this can help be a backstop of information that you received today. Gets into some areas with a little more detail as well. Again, if you'd like to connect with one of us and discuss further how we might be able to help you, by all means, Tanita and I are very happy to take those calls and field those questions. So again, from Envano, the entire Envano team, we very much appreciate your time in discussing mobile-friendly websites and responsive design. Thank you very much.